Okay, thanks. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike. I'm a drug addict, alcoholic, and I'm the guy that really had 9 lives. But I love Valley Hope. I went to the one in Atchison back in the early 2000s, and unfortunately, I wasn't ready to get sober. But it planted a lot of seeds that eventually grew and blossomed. So I got a special place in my heart for Valley Hope. Every morning before group, I don't know if they still do it sometimes, we used to all give each other a hug. It was the greatest. I've never cried or hugged so much in my life, because the way I saw the program is they kind of break you down, to your bare self, and then help build you back up. And that was just pretty cool to me. But if anybody can, if I can get sober, anybody can. Because I know you guys might hear that a lot, but I've been dead several times. And there's no logical reason why I should still be here. And if you don't believe in God or a higher power, after I talk, you might want to rethink it. Because there's something in my life that has made a profound difference. Because I didn't think there was any hope. I was the worst of the worst. I was a bum on the streets, addicted to heroin. And of course, that was the end of my addiction as far as what I did for drugs. But I'll tell you a little bit about what made me the person I was. Coming up, I have a few good memories of my childhood, but not a whole lot. We always remember the bad stuff a lot easier than the good stuff. My father left when I was 9 months old. I had a stepdad at the time I started recognizing, but I had 3 dads by the time I was 7. And a child's personality develops between the ages of 3 and 5. So there was a lot going on. And there was a lot of verbal and physical abuse. For a long time, I thought my name was Little Some Bitch. And one day I agreed with her. Boy, I did get an ass whooping with that. But, I wasn't even allowed to cry as a child. I was always praised for doing mean things. My family's Sicilian, and they were the stereotypical Italian family. There was the organized crime and stuff like that. And I had an uncle. I didn't realize this till later, but he was grooming me my whole life. He had me do a lot of mean things as a child, and one of them was first I got to say, I was a kid you dared to do something, and I always did it. It didn't matter what it was. I was just fearless. And one time I had a big wheel. You know what big wheel is? Yeah. So, anyways, they set up a ramp. It was about this high, and it was just 15 bricks just wobbling back and forth. And so I'm on my big, I'm flying, I'm getting some G's. I hit that ramp and boom, I land. And things like that always happened to me. I was able to not get hurt doing it. One time they had me jump off a garage with the umbrella, and that didn't work either. And I was like 6 years old, so I really didn't know any better. But my uncle, he was a bad guy. The way he lived, he was just a bad guy. That's all I could say. One time I told him, I said, Uncle Vince, I said, Ross and Beanie, my cousin, we called him Beanie, are messing with me. So my uncle's like, okay, let's go. So I take a ride with him to Western Auto. Back in, I don't know if some of you guys might not remember Western Auto, but he went and got some BBs. So he got the BB gun out and went with me to get back at my brother and my cousin. But at one point, I had my cousin cornered in the garage. And my uncle was just saying, shoot him, shoot him, shoot him, shoot him. I'm sitting there, I'm pumping the shit out of this BB gun. And I'm shooting him hard. He's crying, screaming, please stop, please stop. But my uncle kept egging me on to do that and do that kind of stuff. And at the time, it was cool. You know, I was a little kid. And growing up, I always felt like I had to impress. You know, they call it earning your bones. You know, growing up in that type of lifestyle, you gotta earn your way. So I did a lot of dumb things and a lot of things I'm not proud of. I'm ashamed of. As far as hurting people goes, and that's a lot of the reason why I ended up on drugs. You know, I did not like myself. I hated myself. When I looked in the mirror, I couldn't do it. I didn't like what I saw, and it wasn't until I had to look at myself. I had to see my real self, and the only way I could do it was my first name's Dennis, my middle name's Mike, and I stepped outside the box. I talked with Dennis about Mike in the box, and when I did that, so much was clear to me then, as I was able to disassociate myself, but still associate with myself, you know. And but it really helped me. I was when I was young, I was always a ring bearer for everybody, you know, the little kid that carried the ring. And one time at a wedding, we were at the reception, and this guy kept giving me drinks. He said, "Here, take a drink, take a drink." And I didn't know any better. I was very young, but my mom had noticed something wrong. I guess I was pretty wasted, but she asked me if anybody had been giving me a drink, and I said, "Well, yeah." She goes, "Who?" I told her the twins. I was seeing double. I was so smashed. But that was the first time that I experienced alcohol, and I didn't think it was a very good idea to do that, to have so much at a young age. And I'm pretty sure it had some kind of effect on me, on my brain. But let's see. I have to write things down. I have a brain injury, and I'll explain that here in a little while. Okay, and as far as a father goes, I didn't call anybody dad or father. I gave up on the dad idea. My first stepfather, he just recently passed, but he had a son, and at the time I was a baby, you know, and I'm watching him pay more attention to my little brother. And as we grew older, he'd always take my little brother, you know, and stuff. But I eventually got past that. And then my mom met another guy that he was good for her. But as far as a father goes, he wasn't a very good father. But I was just happy that he treated my mom well. And one of the rules growing up was I couldn't have friends in the house. And one day he came home, and I had a friend in the house, and I was playing with my knife too. But he said, "You know, you're not supposed to have anybody in the house." I'm like, "Well, yeah, okay, I'm busted." And he goes, "Well, give me that knife." "Why do you want my knife?" I was just sitting here fiddling with it. Anyways, he took it away from me, and then had put me on the ground, and he put his knee right into my chest. I'm 12 years old, and he's punching me, you know, like a man, and just beat the shit out of me. But that's the way I grew up, and it all seemed normal. It was normal to me to live that way. At a very young age, I was staying with my grandmother, and my Uncle Vincent I'm talking about, he'd come home, and he was just sliced all the way across his stomach. And I experienced that, and it really freaked me out. And then another thing, my grandfather, my step-grandfather, he died, and he was on life support, and my grandma took me in there, and his body would jerk real bad, violently, and his eyes would open and roll back in his head, and it was the machines that kept doing that. That was pretty traumatic for me. So I was exposed to so much screwed up shit that it all became normal. It was just a way of life. I even saw my grandma, that same grandma, she just beat the shit out of a neighbor for messing with my cousin Tina. So everybody in my family was violent. There was another time that my stepfather, he pulled a gun on me. And my mother went to him and said, no, 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 no. But I kind of felt like she should have been in front of me. Don't shoot my son, you know. But that was the way he treated me. So after that, I really got tired of getting hit. Because my mom used to just, she'd take that belt with the buckle and everything and hit me with it. I always had to wear long sleeve shirts when I went to school because I always had bleeding marks on me. Really sucked. So then my mom thought, well, my dad left when I was 9 months old. I gotta explain that first. And that's why I just never really, I talked to him one time in my life and he said he didn't care if I was dead or alive. I'm like, okay, buddy. He didn't show me how to be, but he showed me how not to be. You know, as I got older, I learned to see the glass half full. You know, and if you sit back and think about it, there's good in all what we thought was bad. And for me, it was just a lesson God was trying to show me. I mean, everything. I've been praying my whole life, which I've spent most of my life on drugs and alcohol. But I've been praying my whole life, God, please take this desire away from me to do drugs and alcohol. So many times. But the last time I was in a nursing home. I had to go through 2 years of therapy learning to walk and talk again because of an incident. I'll get to that here in a minute. But I was crying like I never cried before. God, please take this desire away from me. And this voice in my head says, Mike, I've given you the tools to do that with. I was totally blown away, and it's just too smart for me to come up with. So it wasn't until I wholeheartedly made that step and ask God, please come into my life. Please help me. And ever since then, you know, one time I was at a gas station. I was walking in to pay for my gas. And it was in a bad neighborhood, but I just left a bid. I do residential commercial work now. I'm retired. But I was walking in to pay for my gas, and this guy come up from behind me and reached around and he stabbed me right in the middle of my chest. It was a 6-inch blade. He buried it all the way in me. It cut my liver and my pancreas. And they weren't expecting me to live. I was on IV antibiotics for 4 months. I couldn't go anywhere just because of that. And I had sepsis. It was all throughout my body and it was in my brain. They were pretty much telling me I was going to die. So I was just preparing for that. But I prayed hard. I prayed really, really hard. And obviously I didn't die. But that was one time that I cheated death. But the point of that was I have a brain injury from it. And I just recently had an MRI where it showed the white matter in your brain. I guess your brain does that as you get older. But mine has a lot more than it should for my age. And I know why. Because of drug abuse. So that's really affected my life. There was another time, fentanyl. When fentanyl first came out, they had those patches, and my addiction started with cocaine. I'm kind of all over the place. I'll be jumping around a lot because of that issue that I have. But back in the late, I guess I better start further than that. I always wanted to be a better father than mine was, So I was with my high school sweetheart. I was living there at the time. I was 18 years old, and one thing happened after another, and we eventually had sex. Well, she had gotten pregnant from it. I'm happy as hell, I thought, here's my chance to redeem this feeling that I'm having of not having a father. I get to be one. It was so important to me. It was just embedded in my DNA for me to do that. That's how bad I wanted it. But to make a long story short there, Pat, her mother, wanted me totally out of the picture all of a sudden, and constantly outdoing me on a lot of things. But I had this job at I don't know if you guys remember Venture Bakery on 95th Street, off 435. But I was, both Dana and I, that's my daughter's mother, we were working there making donuts, and they made $35,000 worth of wholesale baked goods a week. It was a large bakery. But I had there was a screw missing in the glazer. You know, you put the donuts and then you pick this thing up. It's about this long. It's heavy. It's full of glaze, and you slide it over the donuts and pull it back. Well, there was a screw missing on one end, and you know, everybody stays in their own craft. You get the maintenance man to do the maintenance stuff, and the donut maker makes the donut maker. But I had asked the boss. I said, can you please have a screw put in here? You know, it's making my job difficult. So a week went by, nothing happened, and so I asked the maintenance man. I went straight to him. It was Ed. Both their names was Ed. I said, Ed, can you please put a screw in this thing? It's making my job difficult. Well, another week goes by, so I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna fix it my damn self. So I brought a screwdriver, I'm screwing it in there, and the main boss, Ed, he comes up and says, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm doing what I asked you 2 weeks ago to do, and a week I asked him to do. I'm fixing this machine. He goes, no, we ain't got time for that right now. So I'm like, okay, stick your job up your ass, you know, and I walked out. And that was the main reason why I did walk out. There were so many times that I would make the donuts all night long and then deliver them too. So they just worked the shit out of me, and I got tired of it, but I quit. Well, while back at the house with Dana and Pat's the mother, she kicked me out because she convinced Dana that I quit my job because I didn't want to marry her. That was so far from the truth, it's not even funny. But at the same time, she was selling her pain medication. There's Dilaudids. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dilaudids, but Dilaudids are heavy narcotic. It's equivalent to heroin. And there's so many times I went to the door to let somebody in, and I didn't even know what the hell I was doing at that time. I just knew about pot. You know, I didn't know a whole lot about that. I mean, I knew there was other drugs out there. But she kicked me out and wouldn't let me have anything to do with my daughter. That was my daughter. Well, I got super duper depressed. Remember, I wanted to be the best father that any father could be, and it destroyed me. It crushed me that I was robbed of that opportunity to do that. You know, I couldn't quit my job, but she could sell drugs. You know, with Dana there and the baby being pregnant, so that was okay. Well, when that woman died, I tell you, I didn't waste a tear on that. To tell you the truth, I didn't care. But I had gotten so depressed that I attempted suicide. I took a gun, I pointed it to my heart, and I pulled the trigger, and I missed. You know, I couldn't even do that right. And at that point, I was just so messed up and depressed. I was introduced to cocaine. And I didn't do anything, but I started muling it. You know, back in the day where you can get on the airplane, I used to get on there with 10 kilos in a bag, you know, sticking the thing up there, and it was all cool. It was great. And then I did that for a while, and then I started selling it, and it was going pretty good. You know, it was back in the 80s and 90s, and I don't know if anybody ever did cocaine back then, but it was very strong. And my cousin was getting it straight from the Colombians. But I snorted it one day. I'm like, after a year of doing it, I was like, what's the big deal about doing cocaine? So I snorted a little line. I'm like, okay, this is cool. I was eating, I was still taking showers, you know, and living normal, but the lines kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And my nose was so messed up, I had to have surgery eventually from a deviated septum. It just ate my sinuses up. And then one day, we're going through this drive-through park, and Paul, he was our ringleader. He goes, here, smoke this. And I'm like, what is it? So anyways, I took this hit, and I'm like, oh my God, that felt great. It was freebase, it wasn't crack. There's a difference between freebase and crack. Freebase was just straight cocaine mixed with a little baking soda and make it a rock form to smoke. But I had gotten so highly addicted to that cocaine, and I did it for several years. It got to the point where I would hear voices. I would be so high, you know. Even then, I remember sitting down, God, please take this away from me. You know, it was past the point of feeling good. I started doing it for reasons that different reasons that I started doing it for. So after that, and I'm dealing it, and I took fentanyl, and this girl I knew, I was staying there, we were sharing an apartment, and she had fentanyl patches for her knee, and I had taken one before and chewed on it, and oh my God, it was 100 milligrams, and I mean, it really, thank God that I had a high tolerance, because that's a lot. But I chewed it, got messed up. And then another time, I was up for a couple days. I'd done cocaine and fentanyl. I was sitting down at the computer. This time I chewed. I think I chewed one or two of them. I think it was a little more than one. But I'm sitting at the computer, and this is what my roommate's telling me. And I fell over, and I didn't breathe for 5 minutes. You know, and 3 minutes, your brain's fried. So again, there's no logical reason why I'm able to stand here and talk and even make any kind of sense. So that's one of the things that it's building my stronger faith and my belief in God. So that went by, and then about 2010, I was a construction worker all my life. And I was the dummy that actually worked hard. You know, I was the guy sitting there working while the other guys were watching. I always had a good work ethic. I thought, man, I'm going to plant my feet somewhere so I can be somewhere at a company, you know. But in the end, all it did was get me replaced. But because of that, I've had surgeries everywhere. I've had 18 surgeries on my body from wear and tear, and that's kind of when I got introduced to narcotics, the pain medication. So I was living with this pain, and I started going to the pain management. And back then, you know, that whole opioid epidemic, I don't know if you guys ever seen those movies about how they kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Oh my God, that's just a little piece of it. It's ridiculous how much they push those drugs. But anyways, you know, I took it, and I'm like, okay, my pain's gone. I feel good. This works. So, and then my thinking is, well, the bottle says take one. I'm going to take two, you know. So it got to be where my tolerance was so high, I had to keep taking more and more and more of it. And even if you didn't want to get high on it, you still had a chemical addiction to it. So, you know, I had to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. I know you guys understand that part of it, you know. Drugs, alcohol, it don't matter. You know, it's the addiction part of it. And then one day, I was talking to Amy. She was my first ex, and we've been friends for years. She's my best friend. We were better friends than we were a couple back then. But I got to thinking, you know, why? I asked the guy one time, I'm sitting in prison. Well, had a lot of that too, 12 years of it. We're sitting at the table, and he's sitting there talking about, he's a week away from getting out, right? And he was at a minimum security place, and he said, man, I wanted to see my son, and this and that, and blah. I said, well, dude, I said, why did you throw all that away over drugs and stuff? I said, well, would you give your kid drugs? And he's like, well, no. I was like, well, why not? Well, because I care about him, I love him. And that kind of got my wheels to turn. It's like, how can you love something else if you can't even love yourself first? You know, and that's very important for that to happen. But like I said, it got my wheels to turn. It was another seed that had grown up a little bit and taught me a little something. So after that, I was just depressed again. I was so depressed. I'd taken a whole bottle of pills. Should have died, didn't. That's another time that I cheated death, and I was bad. I had junkies telling me I was bad, and that's bad. But the heroin had such a hold on me, and my mother had died, and I couldn't even mourn right. So it was difficult when I did come back to earth, because of what I had to deal with. It hit me like a rock. So I had to do something. But me and Amy, I'll get back to Amy. I had to figure out what the hell is it? Why do I do this to myself? What is it about myself that I don't love? Well, we all know it's self-medicating. If you got a headache, you take an aspirin. In my life, I felt bad. I took drugs. It made it all go away. I was so numb. When I stopped, I knew where I was having problems with my body because everything started hurting. I just stayed numb for so long. So I got to thinking. Let's see. I tried suicide before I did drugs. So that led me to believe, okay, I inherited this. And Amy and I did some research, and I thought, okay, dopamine is what keeps you at an even level. It keeps you happy and everything cool. So I'm thinking maybe I got a dopamine deficiency, because when I did drugs, the next day I felt normal. I'm like, what the hell? How am I supposed to feel normal after doing drugs? But I still had that, that leftover from it, and so I went with that. And my father, I come to find out, he had depression as well and attempted suicide. So that kind of validated the dopamine issue. So we looked it up. I was thinking, I need a dopamine inhibitor other than drugs. And I found Wellbutrin. It was a great drug for me. It worked. I was misdiagnosed. They said I was bipolar, but it was eventually the dopamine deficiency. And I was telling my mom about it. And 2 weeks later, she says, Mike, I just saw on the news what you was talking about. And so that just, boom, gave it another seal of approval. So I went with it. I took the Wellbutrin, and it's turned my life around a lot. And then as I was sitting, after getting stabbed, I had to do the therapy. The end of it was at a nursing home, and it was over there by the zoo. I mean, it could have been part of the zoo. It was so jacked up there. They were very racist. Every girl that worked there was an ex-prostitute, and every guy that worked there sold drugs. And they were selling drugs in the facility. I couldn't get away from it. They had found me on the floor twice with a needle in my arm, and the 2 other times I should have died and didn't. So after that happened, I'm laying in my bed there, and I'm thinking, this cannot be the rest of my life. There's got to be something better than this. And I had no hope of having a better life because I was so jacked up. I didn't think it was possible to get there. But when I made that first step towards God, God has blessed me, and I've been blessed ever since. And, God doesn't, he's not going to do something for you. God wants us to get off our asses and at least attempt to make change, and then he gets all kinds. I've had all kinds of help. That ruined me financially when I got stabbed, and there was just so many things I wanted to do when I wanted more out of life. I got to live this life. I want to spend it the rest, the happiest that I can. So. It wasn't until about a year ago, and I got stabbed in 2020, but it wasn't until a year ago that I started doing some work. I did handyman work. I got certifications and everything as far as commercial and residential construction goes. So I started doing a little handyman work. I needed a truck. So I couldn't buy a truck, didn't have the money for it. But there was these opportunities. being thrown at me where I could work for them. So, I haven't got the truck yet. I got that little gray Kia out there, and it's banged up on the backside. I don't care. I paid $400 for it. You know, I mean, that was a cash thing that I paid for. I got money from doing something else, but it was such a blessing. And I don't care if it's got that little bang up on the backside of it. All I had to do was change the back axle, which was easy because on those cars it's just a shaft, you know, with the wheels connected. There's no drive to it. It's front wheel drive. I took the back seats out. I put a little board in there. It's crammed full of tools. That's getting me closer to where I need to be. And the more that I talked to God about it, the more these opportunities just kept flying to me. Today I have a Harley Davidson, and when I was a kid, you're in crotch rock, you don't go fast. But as you get older, your lights and this lights change. So I'm like, I want a Harley, and this opportunity just popped up out of nowhere. My friend Clara, somebody I grew up with, she had one. And she got it from another girl, and they just said it was too much power for them. It's a 1200. It's a powerful bike. It would get up and go. But she gave me the opportunity to have it by remodeling her kitchen and her bathroom, and that's what I did. And if it wasn't for keep making these steps closer to doing the right thing and staying off drugs, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And I just can't stress enough that you're not going to do this on your own. You know, you got to know there's a power higher than yourself. You know, mine's God. I don't know if everybody believes in God or not, but and I'd always had God in my life. I went to Catholic schools. Got the shit beat out of me by nuns, the ruler, and all that kind of stuff. And that was typical then. But, yeah. And so God was always in my life. And one day I found, when I had gotten down on my knees, another thing I realized too was God was always there. He was just waiting on me to pull my head out of my ass. And I pray every day. I give thanks. I don't know how many times a day I thank God for everything. There was no way. I was with a stroller and bad. I was pulling into the woods and falling down, going to sleep. One day, I'm sitting at Quick Trip. You sit there, people give you money, and I didn't even ask for it. They just started giving it to me. That's how bad I was. They just looked at me and could tell, because I looked bad. But my legs started swelling up, and I'm like, okay. I'm noticing it, but I'm not caring because I don't care about anything at that moment. Well, then they got bigger and bigger, and they got as big as my thighs, and there was this yellow fluid coming out of my skin. I'm like, what the hell? So I'm so far into my addiction, I don't care. I'm still wanting to do drugs, and then it got to hurting real bad. About 3 days later. And I went to the hospital, and that was the beginning of my heart failure. So now I'm in heart failure because of it. I take the medication, the Lasix, got to go pee 30 times a day. But I'm here. And I have abused my body so much with drugs and alcohol and from work. Like I said, there's no logical reason why. I still even have sense to talk to you guys, and when I didn't breathe for 5 minutes that time, I should have been gone. There was no possible way. And these miracles kept happening in my life. That even if I didn't believe in God, even though that I do, I've come to know Him better. And I realize first you got to realize you got a problem, and that's the first step to fixing it. And it was. I knew I had the problem. It was just I didn't know how to go about changing it. And also, I just never thought there was anything different. I know you guys may not be drugs or alcohol or whatever, but that addiction just took over my life. It controlled every aspect of my life. I mean, as a kid, I used to have nightmares about getting a shot. That's my mom used to say, oh, you're going to be bad. You're going to go take you to the doctor and get you a shot. I'm like, no, because it hurt. I mean, I used to have nightmares about, there was this reoccurring nightmare. It was these doctors, and they had these tubes that connected to this larger tube, and it was like a Gatorade color looking fluid in there with things floating around. But there's these doctors, they're coming after me with these needles, chasing me through rooms and all that kind of stuff. That's how much I hated needles. And to end up on them, I had to really question myself, because at that point I had crossed way too many lines, and I thought, okay, there's no going back. This is just going to be the rest of my life. But I'm sitting there, God, please, crying, please. And it just really wasn't until that point that I started to make that change that brought me to where I am. And today, I still got my little handyman thing going on. I work when I want to. I have my pension and stuff. So I'm doing okay. I almost got stuck in a wheelchair too. I had to rely on a wheelchair, a walker, and then a cane. That was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, was get up out of that wheelchair, and I eventually did, with God's help. And you never have to forget a habit. You ever notice that? You just never have to forget a habit. You get up, you turn the light on, 10 minutes later you don't remember doing it. So this is another thing that I did, that I realized. I thought, okay, if you throw enough free throws, eventually you're going to make one. So repetition is what makes you better at anything. And I recently had that MRI, with the white matter and stuff, and I always kind of knew that I had a learning disability, but after doing the drugs, it really made it worse. I hated them people that just take a test, don't have to read or study. It's like, damn it, because I had to go that extra mile just to I had to go that extra mile to get by. It was a struggle, and even today it's a struggle. But repetition. There's a lot of things. Before I leave my house, and this is all due to the brain injury that I have. I have to check. Do I have my keys? Did I take my medicine? There's been times I went to my car and had to go back upstairs 3 or 4 times, and I hate stairs. It's really bad. I have to go that extra mile to write things down, put it on my calendar, my phone, with all the details. So many times I would get the address and all that kind of stuff, and I needed to call them. I didn't put the name down or none of that. So I was making my life harder than it had to be because of the things that I weren't doing. But now I'm overcoming it with the repetition. I've had to make things a habit, good things, and that's one of the things I realized about, they say persistence is omnipotent, and it's true. The more you do something, the better you get at it. So I have habits now, but they're good ones. And I thank God for everything that's happened in my life. There was times I thought, man, this is terrible. Why me? Poor me. You get the poor me stuff. Why is everything harder for me? When I stopped doing that, I was able to see the good in what I thought was bad. When I got stabbed, one of the good things that happened was they found a tumor on my colon. It was strangulating my colon, and the doctor said he was only 3 centimeters in when he saw it, and he said he didn't even want to pass it because it looked mad. He said he didn't want it to explode. So I was very close to it bursting and hemorrhaging to death. That would be kind of hard for them to figure out. If something happened, okay. By the time you get to the hospital and stuff, there's a lot of damage done. And another thing that I realized when I got to my knees, my whole life just made sense. Everything that I have been through has given me the knowledge and wisdom that I have in order to do this. And God didn't give it to me to keep to myself. He gave it to me to share, and it's such a blessing to have that. And there's been several times where I'd helped others, and a year later, I'm seeing them. They changed their lives around, you know. They got their kids back, got houses and stuff, and I know it's possible. I mean, it was a long trip for me to come back from being addicted to drugs and alcohol, and I didn't see any light at the end, but it did happen through God. But seeing them make that change and know you're a part of it, that's the pay right there. That is so awesome, because I know addiction. I know what happens, you know, but if I don't have the headache, I don't need the aspirin. So I figured out what the problem was, you know, and that was a big part of it. Actually, following through with a lot of things was hard for me. You know, it's been difficult, and this brain injury has made things a lot more difficult. Well, it was something I did to myself, but it could be worse. At the time, I didn't care. I just did not care about nothing. I didn't care if I lived or I died. But I know for sure that it's possible, you know, to change. And my siblings, I'd never done one thing wrong for them. You know, growing up, I was the one that took up for my family. You know, I was the one that done the crazy things, and took up for them, and they turned their backs on me. I'd never done anything bad directly to them, and I couldn't understand why they were angry with me and turned their backs on me. I didn't ask them for money, you know, but I realized that it was what I was doing to myself that they weren't happy with, and that's what hurt them. I didn't agree with them. That tough love thing is, you know, don't love me less because I'm not doing what you want me to do. And that's why I don't talk to them to this day. I've gotten every negative thing out of my life because it's that first step to going back where I was. And I thought I had it beat at one time, yeah. You know, and even when I come out of Valley Health, I got this beat, you know. I ain't worried about it. But in reality, what I did was put blinders up, you know, like to put on the horses. And I didn't see the devil creeping up. And so I'm a lot more consciously aware of what's going on around me. The devil's a crafty dude. And if he wants you, he'll get you. I put the blinders on it so much. I went right back to where I was. But I am so thankful that I'm where I'm at today. And I know it's possible. Whenever you think that it's not possible or things are grim, things aren't going to change, you got to give it to God. You know, I give it to God now. It's His problem. It's not mine. And things just work out that way. I wish I could take back a lot of things that had happened in my life, but I can't. And so I looked for the good in them. And it's just, God has blessed me with wisdom. I mean, at least enough wisdom to get sober and stay sober. You know, it takes that. You got to maintain any relationship. You know, well, a relationship's a living thing, and it's got to be maintenance. You know, even between a husband and wife, when the fire gets low, you throw another log in the fire, keep it going. Yeah, so, I mean, life in itself is just you have to maintenance, and we all know that. And the more you ignore it, the worse it gets. Any untreated illness only gets worse. You know, my little brother, he's obsessive compulsive. I mean, he could be the poster child for it. He quit driving, he quit doing a lot of things, and he became a recluse. And just this morning, you know, and his father recently died, so he's been having a hard time. He went from nothing to doing everything because his dad didn't have a will. And he had a lot of property, a lot of money, and Frank had to go to Greece because there was a house there too. His father was from Greece. But I'm proud of him to see him make that change, but he's not giving himself a pat on the back. You know, sometimes you got to give yourself a pat on the back. Because we are our own worst critics. But to see him making those changes makes me happy for him. I've been trying to get him to get a scooter, you know, because he quit driving. And he's always asking somebody for a ride. And Frank expects the world to change for him. The world ain't going to change for anybody. It's going to be the world. So I'm careful about what I say to them. I like, just stop it, Frank. Obsessive compulsive. I did a little reading on it. Is you can actually beat it, but it takes practice and it takes the will to want to. But he's accepted it so bad that it was like when I thought nothing was ever going to change, and it hurts me for him. So I understand that how you hurt your family members and stuff. And then there's the driving under the influence is dangerous. I went through medical assistant school when I was younger, and the instructor had told me about a story. Where he was a paramedic, and he went to a wreck, and he saw the baby's teeth embedded in the dash. And it's so easy when you're messed up to make that wrong turn, and it's a very selfish act to drink and drive under the influence. And it's so easy to call somebody, an Uber or a friend or walk, and that's something that really eats at my conscience. Is that, man, if I hurt a child, I don't know how I could live with myself. And there I have another reason to hate myself more and want drugs. There's so many. I have so many triggers. There's nowhere I can go in Kansas City where it's not a bad memory of it, and I try to avoid those places. And I tried the new Playmates, new playground. So when I got out of prison in Kansas, I stayed there for a year and a half, thinking, okay, new place, new playground. But when I got my heart broke, I found out Wichita had cocaine too. It was everywhere. And I finally realized making that physical move isn't the answer. It's up here. You got to make this move up here first, because everywhere you go, there you are. You try to move somewhere else to get away from something, you're just going to find out that you're running away from yourself. And that was big for me. It really took a lot for me to actually look at myself hard. And if what I used, that method where I stepped outside the box, I encourage you guys to do that, because Mike was in the box. I stepped out and had a chat with Dennis. I'm looking at him and I'm seeing all the bad, and it was really cool how that worked for me. But yeah, everywhere you go, there you are. I spent the better part of my life on drugs and alcohol. And when my mom died, I felt so bad because I couldn't mourn properly like I should have. And when I came to, I cry all the time. But I have forgotten the day she died, and I don't even want to know the day she died, because she's still alive in my heart. I believe somehow, some way that they're watching over us. And boy, I got some really tough guardian angels, that's for sure, because I put them to the test. But yeah, and you can't deal with life always screwed up all the time. But addiction is a bad thing. If I'm going to be addicted to something, I want it to be something good. I think about my legacy. How are people going to remember me? Am I going to be the drug addict Mike, or am I going to be the guy that overcome adversity? And one thing about me is I don't give up. It doesn't matter what it is, I don't give up. I took the word can't out of my vocabulary. Can't means I won't. I use a simple idea of if you're going somewhere and you have to take a right or a left, or don't do nothing at all, you just sit there. Well, if I choose to sit there, then I don't go right or left. So it was pretty amazing to me how I took that word out of my vocabulary, and it just opened up a way for me to find another way to do things. It was really cool. And try and rationalizes failure. Should, could, would, those are all failure words. And there's another thing I learned too, was that you can't try to do something. You just got to do it. Nike got it right. Just do it. And it's that hit home with me. And it's so awesome. One time I got back out on the streets after being from the accident. I bought a little Mitsubishi Eclipse. I loved that little car. It was black, looked cool and everything. But it had issues. And I had spent a lot of money on it, working on it, and fixing it up. And this guy said, well, you need to get rid of it. I said, why? He said, because of the problems like that. But that's life. I'm going to have, I have solutions today. I don't have problems. I have solutions. Things that are going to happen anyways. Another thing, when I stepped outside myself, I realized that's just life. There's going to be problems. And it's so awesome to have solutions instead of seeing it as a problem, because if you got a problem, fix it. If you can't fix it, it's not a problem. A lady told me that once, and I think that's pretty cool. So many, thank God, how you burn bridges? Some of my bridges were steel. They didn't burn. And those are the ones that I hold on to. My older brother and my older sister, I can't please them no matter what I do. They won't let the past be the past. And they're the first ones to say, quit living in the past. Well, it's okay for you, but it's not for me. My brother, when I was 15 years old, I had gotten tired of getting hit. So I rebelled against my mother. And one morning, my uncles and my older brother, they walked up to me. I was getting ready to get in my car. They put a gun in my side and took me to a garage and beat me bad. I had broken ribs. My head was face and everything was just all bruised and swollen up. I couldn't even eat. I couldn't even use my lips for 2 weeks. That's how bad it was. And I blocked it out most of my life about who was kicking me in my head. And then I finally realized it was my brother. But my brother was always mean like that my whole life. He was just always mean as well, and I understand why. One time my mom asked me why I was so mean. Are you kidding me? We're all a product of our environment, but as you get older, you can't blame anybody else. You got to take responsibility, right or wrong. If my parents robbed banks and I robbed a bank, well, judge, they robbed banks. That's what I know. It still don't make it right. So, simply put, there's a lot of changes that I had to make, and I had to face life. Growing up, I always got what I wanted. If there was a problem, I made it happen no matter what. But that old man, he says, well, you need to give up. I said, I won't give up. And he says, well, that's the problem. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's the problem? I think you might have rethought that later, but back to repetition, I eventually got better at it. I really wasn't taught a whole lot about life. I just took it as it came and lived it. And to think that violence and crime was normal was pretty screwed up. And that was most of my life. And I used drugs and alcohol to run from myself. The first time I was at Valley Hope, they had that method where you look in the mirror and you compliment yourself. Like I said earlier, that was so hard for me to do. I didn't like what I saw. I hated myself. But if you don't have the headache, you don't need the aspirin. I can't really say too much more. We're all a product of our environment, and if it's a wrong thing, you got to accept it, own it, and move on with it. Drugs and alcohol are not the answer. They're just any untreated illness only gets worse. We all have something in our lives that made us dislike ourselves to the point where we want to feel different. Happy people don't need a reason to feel different, So that was another thing that went along with me realizing the dopamine deficiency, and that was just a blessing to me. The other day, I lost my wallet, and because I forgot where I put it. But this time, I couldn't find it nowhere. It was never in the obvious spots. So when I'm going out the door, I rent the top half of a house. In the attic, it's all redone. It's real nice. But I'm going out the door, and I thought, wait a minute. This thought come to me, check the chair. And I looked in the chair, and it was on the side, the chair, I had to swallow stuff up. That's what happened, it swallowed it up, and there was no memory or any kind of thought that it would be there. And it's little weird things like that, and I believe it's God. There's so many things like that, have happened in my life where the unexplainable has happened, and it's really cool. So I know there is a God, and I rely on Him a lot. All of it wasn't until I stepped outside myself. You know, you can look at somebody, you can tell things about them that they don't even know, that they don't see. And sometimes it's good to ask somebody, you know, what do you see when you look at me? I just so wanted to understand myself so bad first, you know, and that's the first step to fixing it. I got to know what it is. But to be here, we all have a problem. We all know that. And I can't see how anybody could be happy with it. Because I sure wasn't. You're a slave to what controls you. And I mean, I was bad. And those were just a few times that I almost died. You know, there was a couple more attempts for suicide. I just was not happy. And I don't see how anybody can be happy, you know, being addicted to something. My every thought was heroin. Everything started with heroin. From the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep. And there's times that crime paid for my addiction. And I am so lucky. I would be in prison for the rest of my life if I got caught for half the things I've done. So I'm really blessed in that area. It's just so awesome to have God in my life, and I can't stress it enough. You got to step outside yourself and know that there's something bigger than ourselves. You know, it's myself that got me where I was. So, okay, I'm gonna try something different. I'm gonna try it somebody else's way, and I chose God. So I took the word "can't" out of my vocabulary. Like I said, and it's so awesome. It just opened up my mind to find a way to do something. Now, sorry for bouncing all over the place. It's a little hard for me to stay on point. You know, I wrote a lot of stuff down. I haven't really looked at it.
Mike, could you share, like, what do you do, like in a day-to-day? Like, how do you stay sober, like, today? Like, whenever adversity happens in your day? What works for you to stay sober?
Drugs and alcohol is not an option anymore.
Yeah, so, like...
I took that out of the equation.
Yeah.
You know? So, and that's how I do it, and I pray, you know. But I'm kind of past the point. You know, I'm always mindful. You got to be mindful. With that and time, I've been able to get better at it. You know, it's that repetition. I made it a habit, and I don't even think of it. The only time I really think about drugs and alcohol is when I go to a meeting or something like that. And I don't go as much as I should. I'm guilty of that. I rely more on God than that program, which it works for some, and that's great. You know, if it works for you, God bless you, whatever works. But I don't even think about drugs anymore. You know, I get up in the morning and I turn the news on. I find out what the weather's going to be like. Can I ride my bike today or not? And if I have a little job, I'll drop my tools off and I'll still ride my bike. That's my escape. That's one of the things that helps me. That TV and God mostly is how I stay sober. My problems aren't mine. I give them to God. You know, it's really cool how that works. It's like, okay, it's release. I don't have a problem now. But there's always solutions to everything that doesn't happen, and that's what I stay focused on. I don't have bad things that happen. I have solutions to what happens in life, and it was all my perspective and how I was looking at it. You know, and a lot of times with people, I got to the point when I was at that nursing home. I was like, how in the hell can you people talk like this and treat people like this? But they didn't know better. But I was expecting them to be respectful, but they couldn't because they weren't taught it. You know, they were just a victim of their circumstances. I understand that's hard to do because you could say something sometime, and somebody doesn't understand it. They don't know what you mean, and that's why I hate texting. You lose so much meaning in texting, and that's become the number one way of communication. But I have good friends. I have a good support with my friends. I'm the kind of person money comes and goes, but good people are forever, and I hold on to that. And the friends that I do have do the same. You know, they would do anything in the world for me, especially Amy. She's like my guardian angel. It was just awesome. I call her and talk to her a lot. You know, and I talk to others that are struggling and stuff. That's what helps me. Yeah, and doing this, you know. Like I said, I might be a little boring or whatever, but I hope I said something today that helps somebody. You know, and I'm going to keep on doing this as long as I can, because God didn't give me this knowledge to keep to myself. What good does He do for me to sit at home and do nothing? It feels good to be here and do this. You know, and a lot of times when I was younger, I had very low self-esteem and confidence. I still struggle with it. I did a lot of theater in school, and then as an adult, I've done a lot of dinner theater. And so many times I could have had the lead in whatever play I was doing, but I'd screw up on purpose. So I didn't have to be that focus of attention. And now when I sit up here and I talk to you guys about getting sober, I don't have a problem. You know, it has nothing to do with me. It's God speaking through me, and it's a lot easier to do it. You know, and so. But I'll eventually. I passed up so many opportunities because of my low self-esteem, or thinking I didn't deserve anything better. I just thought I was a real piece of shit, and kind of sort of was, you know. But it was that thinking of myself that kept me from doing a lot, from not having a lot. You know, I don't deserve a nice house. I don't deserve this, which I did have, but I got divorced, so that tells you anything. So there, you know. My wife, when I was married, I've been really married one time. Amy got annulled. The reason I left her is because she had a bad gambling problem, and I didn't know it until after the fact. When I got out of prison, I built a salon. I got married while I was there. Big mistake. But I built a salon for her to run. She was very good at hair. I did it myself. Took me 3 months and 20 grand. And I thought, I was very proud of myself. Everybody was proud of me, telling me, hey, I'm proud of you. First time in my life I'd heard that, you know, this was cool. My older brother told me he was proud of me. So, but the more I forgave her, the more I bent over and the more she took. When I had to close the salon because of another issue she did, I found credit cards in my name. You know, that I didn't know I had. You know, I bought my own Christmas present, didn't even know it. She destroyed my credit. Today, she has, her son died, Nick, I helped raise him. He had 2 kids, and she has him now. He died from a fentanyl overdose. And their credit is screwed up. And now the cops are looking for her because, if you look at this woman, you would never tell. She looks like a senator's wife. And but she was a caretaker for an older gentleman and embezzled $185,000 from him, his life savings. And how can people do that? I mean, that's a sociopath to the T. You know, she has no conscience. But she kept telling me, you're a good guy, you're a good guy. I'm like, how can I be a good guy if you keep doing this shit to me? You know, and I was taking it personal. It was my fault, you know, because somebody was treating me that way. And it was so not my fault. I was just taking it that way because of her. And I've lost houses because of her. A lot of things because of her. And I hope so. They even call me now. Hey, you know where Susan is? I wish I did. You know, 'cause I used to picture in my head running over her with the dump truck. You know? It was so cool. That's how I dealt with it. That was my coping skill there. Yeah, her mother, she used to take her mother's checkbook and write bad checks. And I can't believe it. You know, it's just, how can somebody like that you ever notice how somebody keeps fucking up and screwing people over, just keep getting away with it? And then I realized, God sees everything. She ain't gonna get away with it. Someday it's gonna catch up to her. But how somebody can be that way to another is beyond me. You know, and it's like,
maybe in the same way that you've had these encounters, maybe she just hasn't had an encounter that spoke to her yet.
Now, she's never been held accountable for.
No, I mean, like, you know, like you've had different opportunities, I imagine, by just being in prison and just, and then getting out, how sometimes they help you with reentry, and like for her, like maybe somebody just hasn't encountered her in a way that she could hear it.
No, I don't think there is a way. I mean, she is a sociopath to the T. She,
That's possible.
her daughter, yeah, it's possible. But her daughter had gotten in a wreck and won the lawsuit. And the first installment was Susan had to be the power of attorney on that. But the first installment was $10,000, and Susan took $5 of it. I said, "Why did you do that?" You know, at the time I didn't know about the gambling problem. She said she deserved it. She deserved it. You know, the world owed her something. But that was a big thing that crushed me too, because I had a dream. I was going to get out. I wanted to move away. I had the money to do it. And she's like, "No, let's just live with my mom. And she's going to give us the house anyways." Come to find out, I didn't want 2 mortgages, you know, and it was just terrible. I can go on and on about that, but I had to stop blaming myself. And sometimes that's a hard thing to do. And you know, when you love somebody and they're sitting there telling you something, or they do something, how could you? You know, you can't love me.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah.
You think up to ask Mike?
Yeah. What's the time?
It's like I'm almost 8 after 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
No. Anyone have any?
Sorry for the boring parts.
No. We really appreciate you sharing your number and
Yeah.
sharing where you sometimes go to AA.
Yeah,
And
if you guys ever want to.
and your journey of going towards sobriety and a lot of the adversity that you've overcome, and even now on how you stay sober by taking language out of your vocabulary
Yes.
and trying to like look for the solutions.
It's amazing how that happens.
And
Yeah.
you probably everyone in this room can relate to your story in some
Yeah.
way, because there's a lot of similarities. And so we're really thankful for your time, Mike. And if no one has any more questions, we'll go on a break.
I thank you for the opportunity. I wish I could have said more and in a better order, you know, but I'm dealing with it and taking it as it comes. So. Thank you guys. And remember, you're not alone. God's always